Hey folks, so this video needs a little explanation. So, a little different than normal. I just finishing up my off time, getting ready to go back to work, and in the title I said how I became a tugboat captain. If you're interested in following this line of work, be sure to check out my video called How to Work on a Tugboat, and that will show you how the steps you can do it today. The way I came up, and you'll see when I talk about this, a lot of the things that are valid today I got grandfathered in, or I should say required today. I get grandfathered in. Anyway, so it's a little strange video. It's not your average TimBatSea video. I just got a bunch of old stills and put them together, and hopefully you guys enjoy them. If you don't like them, dude, I totally get it. It's like I say, it's something a little different. Just wanted to get something up there this week for you. Hope you guys like it. Hope you stay safe and enjoy. All right, take care.
Voor Nederlandse ondertiteling klik op de 3 puntjes bovenin, dan op ondertiteling en vervolgens op Nederlands.
Hola, ¿cómo están? Bienvenidos al canal de TimBatSea, ahora con sus títulos en español.
Vi har nu undertext på svenska. Klicka på sluten bildtext och välj svenska.
Du kan också klicka på captions för norska undertexter.
I was lucky enough to start my life out on an island off the coast of Maine. Just about mid-coast Maine, called Monhegan Island. And I was the youngest of 3 in a family of 5. And it was a pretty ideal place to grow up. Beautiful island, no electricity, no running water. And we had a one-room schoolhouse from kindergarten through 8th grade. It was a wonderful place to grow up. There's a picture of my dad holding me and my daughter, his daughter, my sister. Here's the 3 of us, my brother and my sister and me. And it didn't take too long before I started to develop my tugboat body, as you can see there. I always had an eye for safety. Actually, I think people were always making me wear that. Here's a picture of a friend of mine who'll come up later in the story. This is me and my buddy Lance. But we had a good time growing up in Monhegan. It was really fun. As I said, I grew up, we had this one-room schoolhouse from kindergarten through 8th grade. After that, you had to move off the island. Not the family, but the kids that went to school went to a private school where you would go wherever you wanted. I happened to go to a really good school in New Hampshire called Proctor Academy, where I did 4 years there, and it was a wonderful place. And I like to think that most of my education was brought there. Here's a picture of me when I was a senior in high school. Anyway, during the summers, I spent the time fishing. This is a boat that I fished on, the Aurora. We used to fish out at a place called Cash's Ledge, about 80 miles offshore. We did lobstering, and we did some tuna fishing. And here's a picture of me running the boat with a 975-pound tuna that we harpooned. But then after that, I went to the University of Maine in Orono and was a computer science major. Didn't take too long before I figured that I wouldn't let my schooling interfere with my education. I joined a fraternity, and that's probably where I got most of my education from in my days in college. After that, I moved to Rhode Island, where my brother had been where he was fishing. And he and I were always close, and after I had fished for a little while in Rhode Island, I started selling auto parts there, and went from one company to another company, and then ended up selling computers for systems that looked up auto parts. I got married and bought a house and had some kids, and we had a couple recreational boats. And I used to spend a lot of money having a recreational boat, and realized that I guess there was something missing in my life, and I really wanted to try to start doing something that instead of spending money on a boat, maybe I could make some money on a boat other than fishing. It was about this time in my life when one of my friends who I showed you there earlier, he had gone to Maine Maritime in the nuclear program, and he had built aircraft carriers and submarines and was tired of it. And he and his brother-in-law bought a research vessel, the Argo, Maine, and they had a contract. They had a bunch of different things, but they had one contract that they were going to haul this big thing called a multi-element digital phased array, a big antenna for submarines, and they needed Coast Guard assets to guard it because they didn't want people to run over it as it floated on top of the water column. And right about that time, 9/11 was happening, and so the Coast Guard couldn't give them any assets. So my buddies asked me if I would come and use my boat and work for them. So I did. And what changed in my life at that point was that I started to see where these were amazing people, amazing mariners. The scientists that worked on there were people. These were people that I really wanted to surround myself with, and a much different thing than the people that I was with when I was fishing in Point Judith. So I went and signed on with them, and when the contract got done there, then we went and changed out some Go Moose buoys. Those are the ocean data acquisition buoys in the Gulf of Maine. And when that contract was over, I was lucky enough to find a job on a tugboat as a deckhand, and I worked and started from the bottom there. And at the time, things were different than they are now. I needed the things you needed to do. You needed to have what they called a Z card then. It's been replaced since now with something called an MMC, a Merchant Mariner Credential. But at the time, you needed a Z card. I had a license that I just used mainly as a tax shelter for the recreational boats that I had before. And so I went to work for them as a deckhand and worked my way up, and eventually got a chance to get in the training program there and got trained to become a mate. And I was working for them as a mate for a while, and then when you get an opportunity, they try you out and see if you can handle it as a captain, and that all worked well, and I had a really good time at that company. One of the cool things about that company was they had their own little corporate jet that they'd fly us back and forth with. So that was one of the biggest benefits of working for that company. I've never done anything like that since. But anyway, that's where I was trained by who I refer to as my Portuguese captain, who taught me the vast majority of the things I know about when it comes to tugboating. And after a while, I figured, this is great, this is what I want to do, but before I get too much older, I want to switch from moving. Predominantly what we were moving was called aggregates, which is sand and scrap metal and salt and sugar and that sort of stuff. So I went to work for a company that moved only oil, and some of my friends had been there, and they reported that they loved the company, and that's where I went, and I've been there ever since. I started out there as a mate, and after a while, when the company needed you, if you've progressed up and shown your worth, they need to utilize you in places that they might have you. And in that case, they gave me my own command of a boat that we towed long tows offshore, and that was a lot of fun. And then as contracts change and the climate of the industry changes, I ended up going to do more bunker work where we're not working so much doing wire work, towing barges offshore, but working in New York Harbor. And as you guys are familiar now, those that have been watching know that that's where I've been for most of the time since then. Now, that's about how I came up. As far as the actual schooling and the things I needed a license. The license I had, I just had to get up in tonnage a little bit more. I had to take a trim and stability class and that sort of stuff. I took a bunch of STCW courses for firefighting and first aid and survival craft and that sort of thing. I needed a radar endorsement. But those were all things that I was able to get long before I came to push oil. And now the industry has changed so that you can't just do that. You can have a great big unlimited license, but you still can't run a tugboat unless you have a master of towing. And that requires something called a TOR, a towing officer assessment record, and it usually involves almost an 18-month apprenticeship and all kinds of stuff like that. There's bridge resource management. There's all kinds of other classes that you have to take to do that. I was fortunate to get grandfathered in. I still have to take some of the classes that you have to do every 5 years anyway, but that's how it is. So it takes a little longer now, or it might be there might be a few more hoops to jump through today than it was for me. But it was a fun trip, and it's still very rewarding, and it was good for me. I'm somebody who loves to talk, but sometimes I feel kind of awkward talking about myself and some of the blessings that I've received. I run the risk of sounding arrogant or cocky, which is exactly what I don't want to do. Those that are interested in this line of work, I highly recommend it. I have a video that I tried to put together for people saying if you want to work on a tugboat, you should watch this video, and it tells you most of the steps you have to go through to get to where I am now. But the first thing is you've got to start at the bottom. So some people will say to me, oh, I have this license, blah, 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 blah. Can I be a tugboat guy? Well, you can be a tugboat guy, but you got to start on the bottom like everyone else. And that's kind of where it is. Your license is wonderful, but it's really the time that you have at sea and the knowledge that you gain. If you're not paying attention, then it's going to take you a lot longer. If you pay attention, you can move up a lot faster. And one of those things where you don't have to really promote yourself. If you do good work, you don't have to tell anyone that you do a good job. People will see it, and hopefully you'll move up. There are some situations where you'll hear somebody say, I moved up faster than anyone else did. Well, that was probably because they got a battlefield promotion. The company needed somebody right then and there, and they got somebody right then and there. Most of the time, you'll do a good job, and you'll be fine, and everything will be good. And if you want to move up, you have to wait for your chance for an opening to come. But like I say, those that do good work, you rarely have to say that they do good work because it's noticed by the people that you work with and everyone in the industry, including your employers. You know, one of the things I always talk to my guys about is that we look at some of the guys in our company that are incredible boat handlers. Not one of them has to tell anyone they're a good boat handler, because we all know that they are. We see the work they do. And the guys that usually say how great they are, they're usually the guys that have to say they're great, because we would never know that they were great if they didn't tell us. Anyway, that's that. Oh, you know what? There's some, I forgot to say, there's some pictures in here that I said on my off time, because we basically work about 6 months a year, I would spend my off time doing things because I like the water and I live next to Point Judith, Rhode Island. I was able to pick up a little side job just for fun, running the pilot boat for a few years. And so when you see pictures of a pilot boat, that was just me doing that. And then you'll see pictures of us in the ice and going up the river. Incidentally, this last winter, we had no ice in the river that I'm aware of. I don't think we ever had the river all frozen over. But many years, the Hudson River gets frozen over. Sometimes Long Island Sound gets frozen over. And you'll have to get an icebreaker to come break you out. And once it happened to us, the icebreaker got stuck, and he saw us coming. He asked if we could swing by to relieve some of the pressure on him, and he was able to bust out, and it was kind of fun. We were breaking the ice for the icebreaker, so that was kind of a fun thing. But anyway, that's that, and thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. Next video, I'll try to get some more hands-on tugboat stuff for you. Thank you for your patience while I'm not on the actual boat. Hope you enjoy the pictures that I've thrown up. And hey, if you guys have anything in particular that you'd like to see, a lot of things I can't show you just because of it's not my equipment, it's not my boat, and it's not my property to show everything. But if there's anything that you want to see or anything like that, please write me a comment and ask about it, and I'll take your suggestions, and the ones that I can work with, I'll try to develop something for you. Really appreciate it, and thank you again. Next week's video, we should be back on the tugboat and getting you more tugboat stuff to watch. So hopefully that'll be good. Got a few more silly pictures for those that like nautical stuff to see. So hopefully you stay in there. Anyway, that's about that. Hope you guys stay safe, and remember to wash your hands.